Hey, it looks like we're live. Sorry for the slight delay. I'm getting some stuff set up. We can go ahead and get everything loaded and running for the stream. I'm gonna work on this on the fly, and then we'll be able to get started. All right, I'm gonna put the BGM on. What I'm doing is getting my workspace in Photoshop set up here. I realized as I was getting the stream up and running that I needed to make sure my workspace was sized properly for this, and it wasn't, so that is why you're seeing me paste a bunch of assets in here. But I think I figured it out. I had to go in and look at some guides from the Infinite Fusion Discord on how to set this up, but I think we're good. This is going to be an experiment today, and we'll see how it turns out. All right. Actually, let me paste in one more thing. I think this one might be a little too big, but we'll see if it works. Yeah, okay. We'll put it in separate tabs for now for reference. But for today's stream, since I haven't really done a whole lot with sprite work here on the channel, since I've been playing in Infinite Fusion and really enjoying it, I thought it would be an interesting experiment to try and create some sprites from the existing playthrough to be used as potential assets for the game proper. And I think I mentioned this a little bit when we were streaming the regular game a couple days ago. But I do want to apply for the role of a sprite creator for the game, but it involves creating some assets to use as kind of like an application embedding process. So I can't just make something and submit it. You have to put together some things from existing assets, prove you know what you're doing, and from there you go through the whole application screening process, and if you pass it, then they'll allow you to submit sprites for consideration to be put in the game proper. And so I figured a good place to start would be trying to recreate one of the fusions from early on in the playthrough, and that's Sunrise. This is the in-game sprite. This one is sized to the whatever dimensions and scale at 288 by 288 that they use in the game. But one thing I was reading was saying to take the original base assets and start at 96 by 96, get everything drawn, and then when it's finished, you resize the final PNG to 288 by 288, and then it's done. So everything we draw, we're going to try and do here. Oh, and I see Iconic is here. What's up, Iconic? How are you doing today? Welcome to the drawing stream. And so to that end, we are going to, one, experiment around with kind of combining assets and then free drawing assets to sort of round out and complete whatever it is we're doing. And I've never really done sprite work this way before. I've drawn them from scratch, which I can't remember if we've done on stream before, but I've drawn them from scratch, but I've never done it based on existing assets, which is a key component to what goes on in Infinite Fusion. Iconic says, I'm well, thanks. How are you? I'm doing good. I'm a little bit behind because I had to deal with some stuff at work before I got here. Otherwise, we would have started much earlier. But I think it will be interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to label these individual layers. And these are going to be references. These aren't going to be the ones I edit proper. I don't want to lose my original references. Conk says it be like that sometimes. Yeah. The reason why my schedule during the week is set the way it is primarily driven by work. If I can get out of work on time or a little early, then I can start earlier. Sometimes I get pushed back a little bit, but it's all good. Okay, we'll keep this original reference hidden. One thing that they made pretty clear in the instructions and guidelines for how they accept sprites for Infinite Fusion, you have to follow the Pokemon spriting aesthetic across the different generations, and I think it depends on which generation you're trying to emulate. But the idea of the shading and the line art has to mimic what's in game, so you can't just do something that's completely different, at least not when you're trying to apply for a position to contribute to the game initially. And so to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about here, this one we're gonna try and do some color editing here before we start trying to add detail and unique things. We're gonna try and color zone some stuff out, and I'll kind of explain as we go. But like, where's my cursor? So if we look at this one right here, you'll notice how the line art, sorry, my arrows are a little bit jank because I'm working at a really low resolution. But towards the top of the image, the lighting tends to make the line work a little bit softer. I think it's intentional, kind of to show like a shading and shadowing. And you can see the line art gets darker when there's shadowed or darker sections. So for the underside, it's black. And here, if you kind of think of the light source coming from here, one thing I did read was that they have a universal light source that's coming from the left downwards. And so you'll see the shading kind of mimic that across the different designs. That's one consistent thing I think they all do. And they're always facing to the left for the base sprite. And so I'm going to have to experiment around with the lighting, because it's not the way I'm used to drawing sprites. And so just to real quickly illustrate what I'm talking about, in addition to the fact that I'm working all in one layer, which isn't something else that I don't normally do, if I was going to draw, let's say we do something like this. And these are single block layers. They also mention, I'll probably talk about this later, but you can't have excess things, or stair steps they call them, where the lines are too thick and angular. Instead, you want to make them single pixel wide and smooth out in round sections so they don't look blocky and boxy. But if we were to do something like this, and again, it's all done on one layer. Normally when I do sprite work, I do it on layers, so I can have the line art separate from the color blocking and color assignment, and then the shading separately. But for this, we're working all in one, which isn't a big deal. I'll just have to be a little bit careful not to screw up what I'm doing too much. And I know talking or reading some of the things in the guides for the Discord, I know Photoshop is not really the program of choice for doing this type of work. In fact, getting it set up to do this is a little bit of a pain, but it's a matter of settings and then working with the resolution and commands, and then it's fine. But this is what I know primarily for doing this particular type of artwork. I can do it in a sprite. That would probably be my second choice if I wanted to try and do the same type of thing. And depending on how this goes today, if I do this again, maybe I will give it a try in a sprite and see if I like that better. I do know that your ability to transform and like rotate things and scale is much better with a sprite. You can't do that here in Photoshop. I'm gonna have to freehand everything because I can't, you know, take the Sunkern's head and rotate it without it doing a lot of really annoying things to the pixels. But anyway, for the example here, and I did see your hydrate iconic. If you look at this sample here in the upper right, I'm used to having all this stuff be different layers for the line art, color, and shading like I mentioned, but also it being solid black outlines. The sprite work that I've done in the past, which again, I can't remember if I showed it to you folks before, maybe not, but I've always bounded my sprites with a solid black outline, and so doing this sort of variable shading with the different colors is not something I'm used to doing. That's going to be probably the biggest challenge, is learning how to emulate this style, especially when we start doing some of the unique stuff, which probably won't be today. Today is going to be strictly looking at merging together existing assets and either freehanding them or doing something to combine them. And because I haven't done something like that before, I figured it would be an interesting exercise. But before we do anything else, I want to do some work with the color, the main color palette on this Paris here. And then we'll see about adding in the details. So basically in-game, if you look at our reference here, the algorithm generated fusion for this one basically takes the Sunkern head and plasters it on the Paris body. The reason why the anti-aliasing is fuzzy is because it's doing that using a generator, and this is not a custom sprite. It still looks okay. The anti-aliasing is a little fuzzy and weird, but other than that, it's functional. It doesn't have anything really unusual with how it combines the assets. So we're going to try and do that better. Maybe try and preserve some more of the detail and make it look cleaner. And so I think the first thing to do would be to grab a base color, and looking at this here for the Sunkern, base color is yellow. And I think looking at the way this is shaded, we're probably going to take off the sort of dithering effect. I had to look up what that is, but this sort of dotted pattern here, which also can apply to shading, we're going to probably remove that and make the coloring a bit more simple, just for ease. So we need to choose a base color and then a shaded color. So I'm thinking we go something like this. And again, this is going to be a bit of an experiment because I've never done something like this before. And maybe we look at 2 stages of shading, because if we go back to the sample, oh no, they simplify it. Okay, looking at these darker orange bits, we can probably just combine that into one. So that's one solid shading layer, like so. Another thing they're kind of picky about that I've noticed is how much you adhere to the amount of colors. So, for example, if we were to take the base sprite, and again, we'll do this as a real quick example. I understand this is probably not the most interesting thing technically, but it is kind of important. So let's say we took the base color, and then we took the shading color, we put the shading underneath it, and then we went darker and darker. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 shades. That is not accurate to what the original style looks like. If we were to take a look at the sun kern, it's basically 2 tones. There's kind of a gradient in here, which I can't tell if that's due to anti-aliasing or just the way this one is drawn, but it's not that big of a gradient when it comes to the shading. That's the difference. So we want to keep it as faithful to the original as possible, and that's going to be the challenge. Conk says, be right back, gonna eat dinner. All right, dude, I'll be here. Enjoy your dinner. And so to that end, the first thing I want to do, working from start to finish, is, again, I'm going to block out all the color for the sections, and then I'm going to simplify the outline to give me some space to work. And then basically color first, then we're going to look at the details and what we're going to change. And that's probably going to involve erasing this Paris's face to give us kind of just an open space to actually put in the sun kern details. And I'll have to play around at perspective, because obviously this one up here is facing a different direction than this one down here. And I think from the reference, this one rotated it slightly. I believe that's how it anti-aliases like that. They basically took this one, rotated it slightly, and stuck it in here. Maybe even scaled it down since it's bigger. And they stuck it here. I'm going to try and redraw it from scratch, and if I have trouble doing that in this program, at some point, then I might switch to a sprite. We'll just have to see. Basically, if it turns out it's easier to use that software to do this type of fusion, I'll use that. And if Photoshop is easier to freehand and draw something like I'm used to, I'll use that. So I may be using 2 types of software as I figure this out. But we will continue to block in color, and then I'm going to erase the dots here. That's probably not as important. And then what I'm going to do now is, oh, I could do the mushrooms too. The mushrooms in the original went yellow body with green mushrooms and spots. So I'm going to do something similar, and we'll see if I'm going to change anything with the mushrooms on the back. So the base color is this kind of lighter green. And then the shading is going to be probably this mid-tone. Like so. And for the shading here, I'll probably keep that darker gray tone. It's basically the darkest shadow underneath the cap of the mushroom. That's probably fine the way it is. But we also want to start taking the outline sections, again, to match the color palette of this, since this is kind of our main reference here. And I think the best way to do that is look at the kind of lightest sections near the top where the light's hitting, and then anything that's this sort of tannish color, make that match. We'll leave the sections that are black for now. I think they're probably okay, but we'll see. Again, the point of doing this is to create a base that has like our color paletting, and then from there we're going to start editing and changing things and integrating things with diffusion. Now for the green parts, I think we want this lighter color up top. You can zoom in a bit, make it easier to see. And there's a darker green tone for the more shadowed sections. And I think that'll work here. We can also see in our source material, pretty similar spread. Yeah, I think it's almost exact. And then I'm going to leave the spots the same color. Yeah, that's what they did here too. Spots are the same color, but the mushrooms are different. So now we're going to go in and make some edits to the face. Basically, I'm going to create a blank face section and then see how I want to try and rough in the details from the sun kern. That's going to be challenging, but it should be an interesting exercise. So this part is essentially going to be the custom. This is my attempt to give myself a bit more to work with, and also try and stay in line with the style and the color style for this. So in fact, I'm gonna just delete this upper boundary on the face. This whole thing can come out. And hopefully it'll kind of make sense what I'm doing. Now we're going to grab the base color, fill everything, and then put in like a placeholder shadow, essentially. And we can refer back to where it's sort of positioning the face. So I'm thinking the easiest way to try and replicate what we have here is to basically have this is just a placeholder. It's not where I'm going to stick the details, but I'm thinking we align the face this way, so it looks 3/4 if it's facing this direction. And so we're going to take the eyes from sun kern, and I think it's interesting. The eyes seem like they're blocked in. Yeah, I think that's an artifact of the original sprite work. But we can open this up a little bit. And I think we'll go black outline. And these look like they're 3x2. Let's see, 1, 2. No, that's 3x3. Might be too large. I might have to go smaller, otherwise that's going to take up the entirety of the face. Okay. Maybe go 2x2. And the where we would shade that is going to be interesting. We probably have to go corners. I'm going to think about that. The shading is going to be a little bit different, but that's okay. And then the mouth, this kind of unassuming smile. We can use this color for the smile, but we may have to play around with the assignment a little bit. Actually, before I even worry about shading, I shouldn't have done that. We'll have to figure out where the striping, because this thing has these brown stripes all the way across. In fact, we'll just remove the shading for now. We'll put it back once I figure out how I'm going to do that. The tricky part will be centering this. Yep, that's definitely off center. Might not even need to have that dip. I'm trying to make it look symmetrical, but it's at a slightly different angle than the original. That's why it looks a little different. Even that could work. We'll leave it like that for now. What I'm doing here is trying to match the striping. In fact, there's even someone right in the middle. And if we block in the rest, one thing I wanted to do with this original design is have the sprout thing on the head, but because we're working with such a limited amount of space. If I was drawing this completely from freehand, I'd have a lot more kind of room to work around, and it would look different. But we're trying to work within the constraints of the original, so that's going to be a little bit more difficult. Hey, Snake's here. Snake says, can I interest you in a Doctor Doom foot dive? Considered one of the more OP moves in any Marvel game, really. It's either that or the missiles. How are you doing, Snake? Welcome to the stream. How is your day going? All right, let's save our work here for before we keep going. Snake says, I'm doing pretty good. Just watched a trailer for the next Yakuza game. I didn't know another one was coming out, but I don't follow Yakuza too closely, so that's news to me. How's it looking? All right, we'll try that for now. Oh, the next Yakuza game is set in Hawaii. That's cool. It's another series that's on my list to get into. I just have no idea when that's going to happen. I do own Zero, I think. I think that was gifted to me. What if we tried to put a little bit of variability on the head? Not necessarily to the extent that it's going to look like the kind of sprouting part here, but maybe just a little bit of variation so it looks similar. Let me play around with the shading a little bit. Snake says, if I had to describe the Yakuza series, it's 3D beat 'em up until 7, which becomes Dragon Quest RPG. Yeah, everything I've seen definitely looks like a kind of brawler type game, but it's really like non-linear and there's a lot you can do. So content-wise, there's quite a bit that doesn't involve just mainline story stuff. Like if you get into the side quests and whatnot, you can be doing that for a long time in Yakuza. All right, I'm just taking a look at what we've got here. If there's anything else I want to immediately change. putting some shading and highlighting around the eyes will make it look a little bit less flat. I also need to make sure I'm being consistent in my coloring here. We wouldn't want to have like straight black pixels. It's kind of tough for my eyes to see the difference because some of these shades are really close. Could make the face a little bit more narrow. Basically what that would do, instead of being kind of round and blob-like, it'd make it a bit more kind of oblong, since that's what Sunkern's head looks like. Yeah, okay, that's a little better. I'm just doing some minor changes to the shape of the head to make it look more kind of round and curved instead of angular. I know that's another thing that you need to make sure and avoid. There we go. A lot of really fine detail. Weirdly enough, this one's not terribly complex. Again, losing the sort of sprout on the head, I wish there was a way to kind of add that without it getting too cluttered. It might be doable, but I think it would look kind of weird, which is probably why you don't see it on this one. If I was doing a completely unique sprite from the ground up, I would change the positioning on it a little bit and give it a different pose that'll allow me to kind of play around with the different perspectives. All right. Let's sort of smooth this part out. Again, keeping the round shape. Snake says, okay, he's practicing with Doctor Doom a little bit. I can see why people play him. Oh yeah, Doctor Doom was considered one of the high-level competitive characters in all the iterations of MBC3. and in MVC2 as well. The foot stomp, launch, foot dive, finger lasers. There's a lot of really powerful combos that are really easy to chain with that character. And hidden missiles is a really good assist. So a lot of high level people playing with him on their team back in the day. All right. Sort of do a check and see how we're looking here. Yeah, not dramatically different. The shading is a little bit different due to the fact that we're sticking with the kind of original shading pattern. Let me fix this part. And so rather than it being exactly like the algorithmically generated Fusion calculator one, the shading is more in line with the original Paris sprite, which is fine. I don't think there's any real requirements there. I think it looks better to have more shading on the claws. And in fact, it is here, but it's so faint. If you see where my cursor's tracing, there is a slightly darker shade of yellow, but it's almost impossible to see. I had to zoom in real close just to see that. It doesn't show up very well. Versus here, I think this is a little bit more pronounced and you can actually see it. Snake says, I feel like the reason why Virgil is so good is because he's video game accurate. Have you been playing around with the DMC5 new Virgil? So I did see that character is either out or coming soon. Is that like an alternate? It's like another version of Virgil? If so, then I'm going to assume he's got his DMC5 moveset, which would be pretty nuts. The original MVC or UMVC Virgil was already really good. You see that guy on a lot of people's teams too, and just absolutely wrecks shop when he goes out there. I'm gonna mess with the shading levels a little bit here. The way I've seen this sort of application process go in the Infinite Fusion Discord, once you have a sprite finished and it's ready for submission, what you do is you basically put together your submission. Actually, technically, you post it in like a feedback section for people to look at, and the people who are dedicated evaluators for sprites and whatnot for the game will take a look at what you've done and give you feedback, things to fix, or different parts of the design that might need to be cleaned up, especially if it's a matter of sticking to the style of the games. And then you go through some iterations, and then once it's done, then you can basically mark that one off as ready to include in your application. Oh, okay, DMC5 Virgil's not out yet. Even the original was good though. And so reading through the Discord and with people submitting sprites for comments, probably with the intention of including them in their application, you see a lot of criticism, constructive criticism, and pointers from people who are evaluating them. And then you basically go through iterations and rounds until it's considered good enough for submission. And then when you have your actual application submitted, you have 3 different sprites that you make, and those are considered for your overall application. And people seem cool there. There's definitely some folks I could see who are brand new to spriting and just kind of learning, and rather than just kick them out or be nasty to them, the people in there offered good comments on what to fix, and seems fine. But it also seems like it takes a while because they have a lot of submissions. A lot of people want to obviously create sprite work for the game since it's very popular, and so it might be a while before someone looks at your work. The goal would be to get a couple together here that I could start putting them out and getting comments and building an application to submit hopefully before the end of the month. That's why I want to do at least a couple of these today. And so what we'll do is, let me save this. I will pull up the evolution for this one. I'm not going to do as part of my initial application. I'd rather wait till I get my status as a spriter for the game and then use one that I've created already. So I'll show you folks what I'm talking about. This is one I drew within the last week. But it's not using original assets. This one was drawn from scratch. And so this one is the evolution of both the Sunkern component and the Paris component. So this is Sunsect, I think it's called. And this one took a little bit, messing around with some designs, putting together the big mushroom cap for like a parasect, and then the sunflower face for Sunflora. And then basically trying to mimic the style of the original Pokemon games. And so this one wouldn't work for an application. I was asking some questions in the Discord the other day. This one wouldn't work for the application because they want to see you create fusions out of the existing assets and adhere to the drawing style that way. But if I was given a role as a spriter, then I could use something like this as something later since I made it past the vetting process. And so hopefully, if I can make it all the way through, I can use this one later since I think it's pretty functional design. Combines a lot of the aspects. Snake says, hey, did you see that video I sent you, by the way? Let's see, where was it? Media share? Which one? I saw the Wooly post, which is pretty funny. As far as Marvel Capcom video, was it with the list of mods and stuff? Because I looked through the stuff that you linked a while back when we were talking about it, but I haven't watched them recently. Oh, let me go to media share. You're talking about the Virgil one, the lore accurate Virgil? I have not watched that one yet, but I saw it in there. I'll check that one out later. Generally, I try and check out the media share stuff when it comes in, but if it happens while I'm either away or at work, I'll usually have to go through all the stuff later when I have time. But in general, I usually watch and look at the stuff you folks send me. I might not respond, but I try and watch all the stuff you guys send me. Yeah, I gotta get into Marvel again. It's a deep rabbit hole. Can only do so many fighting games. Still haven't picked up Mortal Kombat yet. I'd like to soon. Oh, well, I guess I can delete that one out of here. Snake says, whatever you do, do not get Mortal Kombat on the Switch. Oh, yeah, I saw the tweet. I think Matt was one who linked that to me. It was the comparison side by side of like one of the Johnny Cage cutscenes with the PS5 version and then the Switch version. I didn't even know it was coming out on the Switch. That kind of surprised me. But I went and dug up some videos on YouTube of people doing like the in-game side by sides of like stages, cutscenes, intros, and the characters. It's stark how different it is, which is, it makes sense. The game is not designed for something with lower hardware output like the Switch. It's cool they put it on there so people could play it, but it looks kind of like hot garbage. I don't even know what frame rate that's running. It's got to be running at like 30. But the models are much lower detail. The environments are lower detail. The characters' expressions are almost non-existent. That had to be a serious chore to port over to the Switch architecture. Though kudos if they could even get it to run, much less run well. But yeah, I did see that. A lot of people were clowning on that on Twitter. It's kind of embarrassing, but at the same time, it's almost impressive that they're able to do it at all. But to Snake's point, I would be getting Mortal Kombat on PC. I was waiting to see if people were having any issues running it. I haven't seen anything, so I'm going to assume the PC version's fine. Because I want to say the PC version of MKX initially, when it came out on PC, was really bad. I don't think it was 11. I think 11 was okay. I honestly don't remember. But one of the PC iterations of the recent Mortal Kombat, when it first came out, ran like absolute garbage, and I essentially wasted my money. And they think they fixed it later, but by the time they did, I didn't really care. So I wanted to see how MK1 runs, and everything I've been seeing seems like it's okay. But we'll see. I'll probably be picking it up. Maybe I'll pick it up in October, and that could be something we look at during Spoopy month. There's DLC coming out for Street Fighter 6 next week, I think. I think Aki comes out next week. And I definitely want to jump back in to take a look at the new character, maybe polish up and do some more online with Cammy. Snake says, I think Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is the first fighting game I've seen where you can cancel your super into a different character super. Oh, you're talking about like a delayed hyper combo? You could do that in 2. People would do that in 2 instead of doing a hard switch. So if you threw a super and then you throw the super input for the next character in line, then they would cancel and jump in with theirs, and it's faster and safer in a lot of cases than doing the hard tag. So that's been a thing since, I know MVC 2 for sure. The original MVC or X-Men versus Street Fighter, it's been a while, so I don't remember. But yeah, that's been a thing in all the games. Kind of something that the series was known for, delayed hyper combos. Snake says, I'm saying this is the first time I'm seeing something like this. Oh, okay. Yeah, it is. It is kind of an interesting mechanic because what you can do, which is fun, tends to be a little bit riskier. But you could basically throw a super before it's done, throw the next super, and then before that's done, throw the next super, and you can basically chain your supers together as long as you have a hit confirm on the first one. Kind of depends on which super you're throwing, but what you could basically do is you could cycle through characters and have them throw supers in a row. I don't think they've ever restricted that, as long as you have the bar. As long as you have enough hyper or whatever super bar, then you can basically chain them. Or you just go all in and throw like the team hyper combo and throw them all at once. But that tends to be high risk, high reward. Okay, let us move on to the next one. I need to go and look at my file and see from the playthrough what else we were working with the bug types. Okay. I could pull up the archive footage for the latest one and see. The point of doing this particular exercise with the sprites is to draw fusions that don't have their own dedicated sprite in-game. And I'm focusing on the ones from my playthrough so that hopefully I can get them added before I eventually stop playing the game, which might not be for a while. So let me go double check and see what team was part of my team towards the end of the last session. We ran for a bit. It should be footage from Monday. Let's see. We had this main team for a while. We had the Sandshrew, Paris Fusion, Monkey. All right, I have to pick up that Paris Stratini Fusion. Oh, interesting. I guess nothing we had in the first or in the last session doesn't have a dedicated sprite. I could go back to the very first one we did. Or another option would be to go and pull some ghost types for my offline playthrough I'm doing now. That one definitely has some that don't currently have a dedicated sprite. Snake says, okay, got to head out. Have a nice stream doing cool pixel art with a hydrate. All right, Snake, thanks for popping in and hanging out. And thanks for the hydrate. Hope you have a good rest of your evening. And I will see you in the next one. We'll be back on Sunday, I think. Sunday, we're doing more Armored Core. So yeah, take it easy, my dude. Oh, I know one I could do. Oh, that would be kind of difficult, but I could do that one. Let me see if I can find the references for it. Oh, no, that's not going to be on this database. Okay, that might be difficult. I have a couple fusions on my offline playthrough that use Hone Edge, the Ghost Sword, and some of the products for the final fusions look really, really cool with Aegis Slash. Aegis Slash Haxorus looks really, really cool. It's gonna be a while before I get it in that playthrough, but it looks incredibly rad. Okay. Well, I guess we could look at the fusion calculator and just see which ones I want to try and put together. Honestly, I thought this one was going to take longer, and I might tweak little components before I actually submit it for comments on the Discord, but I kind of thought it would take me longer to get through one. And Iconic is back. How was your dinner? Hopefully it was good. I know I say that every time you come back from dinner, but I genuinely hope you had a good dinner. So to kind of compare Iconic for Sunrus here, the fusion algorithm one, that's just a mashup of the assets, looks like this. I'll zoom out a little bit. This is the one that we would have seen in game when I was playing. And the one that I did looks like this. It is a little bit cleaner, and I might need to fix the eyes. Oh yeah, I don't know if you saw it since you just came back, but I was explaining to the chat that one I want to get added later that I drew before I realized there's a whole application vetting process is the evolution of both the components of the one you just saw. This is Sunflora and Parasect. But from what I gather, you can't submit completely unique drawn ones as part of the application. You have to use existing assets. So this one will be backburnered until I can get approved as a spriter, and then I'll try and submit it. This one was considerably more work because I had to draw it from scratch, but the eyes, where is Sunkern? I was thinking the eyes might need to be fixed as far as the black border, but in the original they're completely bounded. Probably to show they're kind of sunken and recessed in. I'll probably leave it for now. We'll see. But I was in the process of looking at fusions, like the next one to do. I definitely have time to do one more, at least get one started. So let me go pull up the combination calculator. It's in my other browser. And I'll put it into Chrome with the stream. Did I link this calculator before? I think I did on Monday when we were streaming the game proper. But did I link the thing that lets you look up all the combinations? Because it's pretty neat. Let's see. Again, keeping in mind bug types. Something that I might want to get for the playthrough proper later that I don't have now. Let's see. I'm going to start with the Gen 1 stuff. Let's see. Pincer Fusion might be cool. That would be a little bit more difficult than the one that I just did. Same thing with the Scyther Fusions. Let's see. What doesn't have a dedicated sprite for Pincer? Bunch of the starters. A couple of the starters don't have base forms. And we talked a little bit on the last stream how some of the ones that people have created are really gnarly. Pincer's got some cool fusions that people have drawn. The Beedrill one's cool. Does not look like there are fusions for the Pidgey line. Could try that. Let me see if I can grab the assets for Pidgey and Pinsir, and we'll see what we can do. We'll do the same thing that we did for Sunra's here. I'll leave it on screen. Let's see. First, I'll grab Pinsir. Now we'll load it and drop it into the canvas and see what kind of scale we're looking at. Yeah, it's a chunky boy. Now, base sprite for Pidgey. So the way the whole fusion methodology works is you have component A is the head, component B is the body, and then you can flip them. So I'll probably pick one of the two, since I don't know if I have time to draw both today. We'll see. Let me grab Pidgey first. Oh, there should be a whole bunch of multiple gens. Yeah. Let's get the Gen 3 one. The reason why I'm putting these all on the same canvas is just so they're easier for me to reference. So the scale of these is pretty dramatically different. If we went Pinsir head on a Pidgey body, then we'd have to basically try and fit or duplicate the effect of the mouth somewhere. I think the eyes are pretty similar, that we can most likely keep them the same, but having to adapt the head at this scale would be kind of a challenge. Hey, Lava King's here. Lava King says, "Hey Raku, I saw a TikTok and Instagram video on how Pinsir fusions are nightmare fuel, but everyone acts like Muck fusions are terrifying." Based on what I've seen, the Muck ones are kind of cool because they tend to take the existing fusing Pokemon and like melt them, make them look like some sort of like horrible toxic waste accident. But I think the Pinsir ones tend to do a lot of interesting things with this weird vertical mouth thing it's got, the mandibles, and like does some really, really cool patterning with like too many mouths. But yeah, there's definitely no shortage of Nightmare Fuel fusions, which is pretty cool. Okay. What I'll do is I'll grab the existing algorithm fusion from Jupheal so we can see. I won't put it here in the canvas. I'll make it a separate tab so we can jump between the two. This one's Pingy. Pinsir head, Pidgey body. That's not what I wanted. There we go. So this one takes the Pidgey body and sort of overlays the face of the pincer and its feet. I definitely think we could probably take that and make it a little bit more or kind of seamless when it comes to the combined one. Let me see if I can find a slightly larger Pidgey sprite that might be easier to work with. It's not a very large Pokemon, so that's probably why these ones aren't super detailed. The Gen 4 ones... Gen 4 one's a little bit more neutral with the wings folded, but I kind of like the wings out one from Gen 3. Okay, let's see what we can do. This will be a challenge. Lava King says, I'm going to find new ideas for Nightmare combos. There's definitely no shortage. Okay, we're going to use this one. Pingy. Another problem is because the resolution and scaling is so different, we might have to take some artistic liberties in order for the details to sort of carry over. Lava King says Dust Noir has potential. Yeah, I found a really cool one in my offline playthrough that is Electrode and Dust Noir. It's the one that looks like a ball. I think that's Dusk Noir head and Electrode body. It's very simple, but it looks cool. I'm going to be making that one when I get there. I managed to pick up a Dusk Noir from one of the... or Dusk Clops from one of the areas I was at. Then I got an Electrode from the power plant. I did see your suggestion further up, Iconic, about how to repurpose the mouth. I'm going to have to see what makes sense. That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because this thing is so much smaller. In fact, we could just put the line here. Another thing I was thinking that could be a way to sort of bridge the gap would be to give it a horn, maybe coming up this way. This is just an approximation, but have like a single kind of stag beetle like horn with the pincer style, and then maybe try and repurpose the mouth here. Again, tricky thing is going to be the scale. So if we look at the bounding here, we could do something like this. This is going to probably look really weird until I figure out exactly Oh no, that might work. Okay, yeah. All right, that has potential. Let's block in everything. I'll have to adjust the shading in a sec, but I'm just trying to get the teeth, the effect on the teeth. Because what we could do is the shading is going to be a little tricky. Maybe go dark brown instead. There's a bit more guesswork for this one because we're dealing with two radically different scales. Iconic says that would look cool on Pidgeot. Yeah, the later evolutions for the bird are easier to work with because it's a bit larger with more detail. For the first form, it's going to be a little bit more simplified because we're working with something smaller. So that's why, I mean, there's a lot of more guesswork than the one we just did. Now, if we were to... In fact, we'll take this color here, this brown. If we were to clear out this section here and go for like a horn. Then it might look something like that. Whoop. Make sure I stay on the right layer. So what I'm doing here is sort of a rough pass, is trying to get the shape and the lines down for what this would look like. And of course, this is all in the wrong layer. I'm gonna do that. And then based on the rough shape, I would then be able to kind of line in the texturing and details and the actual coloring. It's most likely we would go a little bit darker on this part, keeping in mind the shading rules that this thing follows. This part is going to be, again, a bit more free-handed because I'm kind of trying to guess where all of the details go. It's a little more tricky. It's more tricky because we're working with less real estate. Now for the feet, I'm going to save this before we move on. Well, I have to decide later if that's too much line work and texturing, but I do like that it gives it a bit more of kind of a segmented look. If we wanted to go full nightmare fuel, I think what I would probably do if I wasn't working with an existing sprite base like this is I would have like a Pidgey that is maybe more kind of like a flat on the ground type of pose, but it have like a big claw mouth on its back. If I could draw a unique pose for it, I'd probably do that and scale it up a little bit more so that I have more to work with. But I can't do that. Could do an alternate. Once you have the sprite rule, you can draw variants for things too. So maybe I will do that at some point. Okay, we could try and do unique feet. Let's do this. Put it on a separate layer. I'm going to line this all in from scratch and we'll see how it looks. It's not terrible. It's a little bulky though, thanks to this part. We could, in fact, again, I'm gonna start creating copies of all this stuff so that if I don't like it, I don't lose the original. Got an idea. Let's see if it works. I can't say now realizing how little color Pinsir has. Yeah, it's a pretty simple palette. It's very kind of sandy and simple, kind of like something you'd see in like a desert beetle or something like that. But it does kind of contrast with Scyther. It's kind of like its cousin in the lineup, and Scyther is very kind of bright. Pinsir is kind of more muted. which I'm going to assume they did that just so they could kind of set them apart a little bit. Okay. Let me shore up the claws here. And I'll illustrate what I'm trying to do. First, we're going to amputate the feet. Verb ceases to have feet. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to duplicate the shadowing from the Pidgey sprite proper. Just needs to be close. Doesn't need to be exact. Like it says hummingbird Pidgey. It's okay. We'll fix it in a sec. Okay, keeping the same sort of tan-ish coloring. This one does have 2 shades, but I'm going to keep it kind of simple. And then I think what we would do, so my idea is we have one. And we have 2. We merge them down. And now we can actually take a look at how the shading sort of merges together to make it look like they're not just stapled on. What I did was I took the original leg here on the left, then I just copied it and flipped it horizontally so I don't have to draw it again. Ooh, I got a better idea. Let's make the color paletting on the talons match color paletting on the horn. Because then we can use the same shade to make it so that the claws aren't just flat white like they are in the original Pinsir. And I think I want to put a little more of a shadow here. And we could even take a page from the pincer eye. Maybe we go up, shrink this one down a little bit and change the shape. Basically, taking a look at the pincer's expression, it doesn't have like a lower eyelid. There's kind of a mix of shading here, which is interesting. I'd be curious to see if the people on the evaluation panel are a real stickler for adhering to the shading style of the original versus trying to clean it up a little. So I'm going to find out. All right, let's zoom out and take a look. That is definitely the wrong layer. All right. Let me paste in the original Pidgey and we'll kind of compare. It's actually pretty functional. I thought that would be more difficult to do because of the scale. But I don't hate it. I think it's actually pretty functional. If I wanted to get really kind of wild and wacky with it, I'd go and try and duplicate some of Pincer's color scheme here. But I think having the teeth and the horns and claws and feet already is a bit of a deviation from the original, so we won't get too nuts with it. This one's going to be Pingy. So there might be some minor tweaks on the coloring for the horn. But other than that, I don't really see anything else that jumps out at me as like a big glaring fault. I think this one will work. I guess I got lucky. Getting the mouth. The mouth was probably the most challenging part. Where's Pincer? I'll have to think about the shading around there. I think it's pretty close to the patterning with the way everything else is laid out. It's probably fine. I could foresee them having a comment on the way the shading blends here. But other than that, think we managed to pull it off. What if we tried the next step up? That took less time than I thought it was going to take. I thought I would be working on that for like an hour. What about Pincer and Pidgeotto? Let's take a look at the assets and then we'll see what we have to work with before we wrap it up, because it's still got some time. So I got Pincer in here already. Let me go and grab a reference sprite for Pidgeotto. That's the more interesting design, I think. Okay, yeah, the Gen 4 sprite for that one is a similar positioning with the wings out, but I think it's, well, I can't tell just when looking at it from a way zoomed out resolution, but that would be fun. I think there's been a couple sprites in Infinite Fusion that have used this one. Like the rival gets a Nidorino Pidgeotto fusion, and I'm pretty sure it's using this base sprite. It looks really cool. Let's see, Pincer, Pidgeotto. Let me grab the fusion sprite. You can drop it in for reference to. Yep, even the algorithm one uses that. It's kind of cursed, actually. The algorithmically generated one's kind of cursed. This one's called Pinotto. Let me load that one up. We'll hide you. This is what the game generates based on the algorithm. This is the face on the body and then the feet. I don't like it. It's not completely unusable, but it looks jank. It looks incredibly jank. And I think it's because of the fact that the little wisp of hair, it looks like it's got like a punk comb over with the horrible nightmare mouth. It is, and the feet actually don't look too bad, but the face is a mess. Boy, do I not like the face. Okay. So let's load in the Pidgeotto asset. I have an idea. I have an ambitious idea that may or may not be really, really bad. Okay, let's put you over here. We'll edit directly on the Pidgeotto sprite. This one might actually require some cut and paste, which would actually not be too bad. Okay, so here's my idea. Iconic, since I trust your judgment. This is probably going to require some more freehanding than the last one. Let's create a copy of this. I'm going to basically do like a mock-up version. And I'll do it with a black pencil. So here's my idea. First off, And I can make another copy of this if I don't end up using it. Pidgeotto's original face, completely gone. All right. We redesign out the torso so it's got a bit more of a shape to it. Again, this is really rough. I'm doing this as kind of an approximation. We change the shape of the head overall. It's not going to be a bird beak or anything. But based on this, we align the mouth. And we got approximation somewhere. Maybe go a little bit more. Let's go a little bit more weird and wacky with it. Again, approximations. We have a mouth that goes from here all the way down. All right. Heck, I might be able to just use this one directly if this looks something like something functional. So these are the teeth. The edge of the face is going to be weird. But we have the mouth, and then unlike regular pincer, because that's boring, again, approximation. We give it a whole lot more eyes that go down. I think I could probably work with the perspective and get them here, at least a couple of them on the left side of the face. All right. So a bunch of eyes. And then instead of the pincher things on the top of the head, we do the hair. And we add the texture and the pink. Maybe give them kind of more of like a frondy look instead of horns. Maybe curl them a little bit. But we have the hair going back like this. They'll be kind of like two antennae, but they'll be kind of textured to look more like the hair strands. We could even have them go back further or something like that. So they have a little bit more like a curl at the tip, because it's like strands of hair, I know, on Pidgeotto. The point would be for it to be like antenna as opposed to just regular hair or claws, since it's a bug type. We could even, might be a little bit more difficult perspective wise, but we could even have them go out like this, kind of like moth antenna. Again, this is all kind of rough approximations, but we could even have them going out this way. That would be a little bit more difficult to do and show the texturing, but that's an option. I think at the very least, taking the face and then sort of constructing the shape and then going with all of the eyes and the mouth is a pretty good start. And just like we were talking about when we were talking with Lava King earlier, the idea of bug-based nightmare fuel is pretty doable with Pincer. I think I want to have the eyes be identical shaped. So 1, 2, 3. Out, zoom in. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, something like that. Let's go 6. 6 or 8. Let's try 8. And then we definitely want the patterning on the mouth to be proportional. Yeah, something like that. I could probably play with the shape a little bit to make sure it matches. But the symmetry aspect would be tough with this particular one, but I think we could pull it off. All right. I'm just going to edit directly on this one. I don't think we need to worry too much about recreating it from scratch. Or, Pincer's eyes are kind of close together. Could take some artistic liberty and then just do the 3/4 perspective without the eyes on the left. I think trying to cram them in would make it difficult. I'd have to make the head wider, which I could do. One thing I was thinking about doing for the Infinite Fusion playthrough is at some point, once I beat the game with a Hall of Fame team, is do an actual drawing of the winning team. Not in this style, in like a regular drawn style. I think that would be fun. Definitely be easier than doing this. So we'll see. Hey, there we go. I'm doing this all in black just to get an idea of where the outlines lie. For keeping with the actual shading style, it's going to be more brown for this part. It'd probably be something like this. Shading itself is going to be difficult. I'm not looking forward to that. But let's put in the eyes. I think widening the head gave me enough space to be able to work with the eyes. It's fine. Now for the overall color of the body, Probably the same sort of plumage color as everything else. And I had to think about that. Again, if I was going for something really out there, I'd probably make the whole thing like a base color, like the base kind of gray color of Pinsir, and then give it like brown stripes or something from Pidgey's darker kind of colored feathers. But we'll keep it simple for now. We can do kind of like a color patterning here. Oh, I kind of like that idea. Kind of like the way there's almost like stripes on Pidgey's head with the feathers. We do something kind of similar here with the face markings. Let's go single stroke. Iconic says, whenever you get to the plume antenna thing, I think it should have the pink from the initial design and some gray from the horns. So you mean kind of like streaked? Like a streaked color? Because what I could do is kind of have like the roots of the antenna closer to the skull be kind of grayish, and then have more of like a color gradient with like the pink going up. Kind of like you would see on maybe like a flower leaf or like a flower petal rather, where there's a bit of a gradient. I could do that. I could also do like highlighted tips that are a bit more gray. We can see. It's not going to take me long to get there. This thing is going to lose its pupils. There's not enough space for pupils. But I do want to highlight the eyes a little. What color should I use? Maybe this one. We'll do this for now. I might change it later. Now for the mouth proper. Since the whole thing isn't supposed to be completely framed in black, I'll probably do something like that. This part is a holdover from before. I'm on the wrong layer. Am I on the wrong layer? No, I'm on the right layer. Oh, it's Pinsir's hand. I wonder what that why that looked weird. Okay, I'm gonna hide that for now. Doing this type of sprite work, I'm always super paranoid that I'm gonna be working on the wrong layer, thus costing myself work, having to go back and delete things. Ask any digital artist, they'll tell you working on the wrong layer is death. It happens all the time. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, for this particular design, I don't think we'd really need to do a whole lot with the feet. Unlike the other one, where we kind of took the pincer feet and overlaid them, I think if we focus on getting the shading and everything with the face, I think the feet would be fine the way they are. Because you don't have to put the feet on the model. It's not required. It's just what the algorithm does when it generates them. Okay. We could change the color of the feet. Maybe make it match the kind of sandy tones on the body. We could do that, but I don't think we need to get rid of them altogether. Okay. Now for the antenna. Let's rough in kind of the shape. Or the hair antenna. Let me rough in the shape and then I'll figure out how the coloring is going to work. This one's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. And it'll be a challenge because I need to make them look kind of sharp-ish and not like bunny ears. Iconic says, well, what if we add pincer's hands to the wing's edge, kind of like a bat? That would be interesting. We'd have to do it up at the tip, though. And do like a hand. I think anatomically that wouldn't really make a ton of sense. Because the appendage is like the wing tip. It's not like a regular, like a bat wing. So my concern with that is that it would look like it basically has little hands on the tip of its feathers. Now, again, if we were going for something really out there, I would say you take each of the feather tips here, and see my cursor, and you put claws at the edge of each one of those. That would be really difficult to do, and I think that might be a little bit beyond the scope of what we're doing here. But if we were gonna do something really, really out there, I would put like a whole bunch of clawed things, so it looks like there's like a Cthulhu-esque thing coming out, but that would be difficult. So let's focus on getting the antenna kind of together here. While I'm up here, I think I want to redefine the edge a bit. Where are you? Okay, the texturing and the lines on this are going to be a little difficult. So the darker shadowed edge on the underside's got to be this color. And I gotta make this black. As far as the texturing, this is the part I was trying to think in my brain how to do. It's gonna have to look something like this, a darker color, so that when we actually put the full color fill on, then it doesn't get lost. So what I'm gonna do now is do like a straight form fill with the base color of the hair, and then we're gonna take a look at that idea that Iconic had as far as the pincer's color, because we can experiment around with it and see if it's too much or if it kind of blends, because I got a couple ideas, but it's gonna depend on what the whole thing looks like, so we'll see. We have kind of this salmon color. It's a little bit lighter. And there is a usable shade that I think is different from the outer part. Yeah, it's this mid-tone right here. Well, oh, that's a mid-tone, but it's slightly darker, so we use for shadowing. Yeah. Go a little bit darker here since these are closer to the head. Okay, let's zoom out and take a look. So, taking a look at the color scheme, and I think I need to add a little bit more highlighting in here. So I think the problem with trying to put in the gray highlights Iconic is it's going to seem a little bit arbitrary, because there's no more of the pincer color palette anywhere else on the design. If we put like some streaks or some kind of grayish things at the top, I know I've seen this question on some of the evaluation applications for the spriting team. They've asked why there's something that doesn't fit with the original palette, if it seems like it's something kind of random. And my concern is that if we did that, they would wonder why there's like random gray tips at the top when Pidgeotto doesn't have hair that has streaks. Pincer doesn't have anything like that either. It's just including a color reference for the sake of a reference. And I think that could be a potential critique, because it would seem a little out of place. Let me fix this thing here. I'll try and explain what I'm talking about here. So like, where are you? Where's Bug Boy? Let's say we took the base color of the horns, and we did it up here. I'm not going to bother shading it just for an example. If we did that, it would look kind of arbitrarily out of place, because no one would assume that it's a reference to Pincer's color palette. They would say, if this is supposed to be like Pidgeotto's hair, the hair doesn't have like frosted tips essentially. And I think it would be a little bit out of place. It's a cool idea, and I think if I wasn't having to be kind of careful with the on model nature of these custom sprites. I'd say go for it if it was a little bit less constrained, but having seen them ask people that before, I could foresee them asking that for this one too. But it was a good idea. That's why I wanted to, like you said, have the plumage match really closely to what Pidgeotto has. I just hope it comes across as kind of more like antenna versus horns. We'll see. Like, I wouldn't say, from what I've read, that the team is super strict, but they do want things to kind of make sense when it comes to the design, which I get. I could be kind of a stickler for that too when I'm designing things. Oh yeah, you're good, Iconic. I think the suggestions are always good for kind of bouncing around ideas and seeing based on different possibilities what's feasible and what makes sense. I just want to explain, just like I try and do whenever we're talking about design or anything like that. If you guys have an idea and I don't think it's going to work, rather than just say no, I'd rather explain why there might be an issue with it so it makes sense. That's all. We could, what we could do. All right, let's test this. Since I do like your idea, and I think we can make it work in a different way. Like I mentioned before, we could do something with the feet without changing the actual. I'll leave that there. Without changing the actual shape of the feet, and that's take the coloring for Pinsir and put it on the feet. That I think is going to be a lot more obvious as far as a design choice. So let's see if it works. I'll do the same thing up here. Iconic says, just making sure I'm not coming off pushy. Not at all. I don't think that is ever really a risk, Iconic, based on your behavior here. Not that I think I'd have to worry about it, but you're fine. Trust me, you're fine. Can't tell if this. I think that's as white as it's gonna go. Trying not to make the eyes look like they're also teeth. What if we did this? This is going to be a little bit of a deviation, but I want the teeth to look like they're not the same as the eyes. So I'm going to actually make the teeth the color of the horns. Yeah. Okay, so let's do this. It's going to be a bit of a departure, but I think it'll be better for the overall thing to not have the details get confused. And then we will be pretty much done. I'm going to take the highlighting off of the eyes. I think the only thing left to do would maybe round the shading out just a little bit, since there's a slightly darker shade down here. Maybe some over here. Okay, let us compare. First, I'm going to save. Let's compare it to the original Pidgeotto sprite. Interesting results. I definitely think the idea of having the mouth be one of the centerpieces from the two makes it definitely stand out as far as where the components are coming from. Let's compare it to the in-game generated one for Pinotto. So here's what the game comes up with. To your point, Iconic, the game takes Pinsir's color palette and basically applies it over the whole thing. So that particular idea, the algorithm definitely does. But the way it executes everything else with the face is the jankiest part. I could kind of forgive the hair if the face just didn't look so awkwardly pasted in there and with all the anti-aliasing making it fuzzy. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely something that kind of grabs your attention. So if we compare that, let's hide you, to the custom here, I'll move it up. Also loses the tail. I didn't realize it the first time. This thing basically loses its tail feathers and becomes kind of just a big lumpy creature with wings. Versus here, retains the tail. We have the Pinsir coloring on the feet. And then everything else is kind of in line with what you see on Pidgeotto. Might need to change the lines here to match this kind of color. Where's the original? Yeah, that's I didn't pick that up the first time. Let's fix that. Those inner lines and the texturing for the antenna, a little bit too dark. Right. Okay. I may tinker around with some more shading on the face. Like there is this color here, which I kind of neglected to add. Maybe we can do like a real quick spot shading here. I think this makes more sense where we have these spots. kind of makes it look more like a gradient, which I think is, for this gen, that's how it shades. So that's not entirely completely off base. So this is one of the few instances where there's like a two-tone shading here. There's a mid and a dark tone, which I guess we'll see if that gets me in trouble. It's probably not a big deal. We'll have to see. Again, comparing this one to this one, I think this is a more functional version. At least more interesting. So I will call that a success. So this is Pinotto. All right, let's step back through the ones we've done so far to recap, and then we will call that a stream for today. I think we can discard this one. So first up, we had Sunrus. I'll do this in order. I'm definitely gonna have to do a final evolution for the birds though. I'm gonna have to do Pidgeot and Pinsir. If I can get the first two approved, then I definitely have to do that last one. Just makes sense. So first one, Sunrus. This one is Sunkern and Paris. Straight from the playthrough. Pretty simple. Can't think of too much I'd want to do with this one. Maybe adjust some shading here or there. But this is a little guy. I think this one's pretty simple. Didn't take that long. Next up, Pingy, or Pingy. Pingy, probably. I'm getting the Pokeball Pingy. This one is Pinsir Head, Pidgey Body. Yeah, not a huge departure. Actually, wait, I deleted the wrong one, didn't I? I did. Well, that one. Not bad. This one. So, a lot of the design elements, pretty straightforward. I think the feet a la Pinsir might need some slight tweaking with shading, but overall, I think it kind of fits together decently well. And then probably the most complex of the ones we've done today, Pinotto. Definitely looks angry, as anything fused with Pinsir tends to do. But good results, I think. We'll see. Alright, we'll go ahead and do a final save here. I will be continuing to work on these sprites off stream. If you folks thought this was interesting compared to the regular drawing stuff we do, I'd be down to do this again. Now that I have everything set up to do this, it's pretty easy for me to get everything loaded, and I'll tinker around with a sprite outside of the stream and see if it's easier to put these asset ones together and see. So I definitely would do this again. There's a lot that's going to be probably happening and changing in the playthrough as we proceed. Right now, it's looking like Pokemon Infinite Fusion is going to be the long-term playthrough until I at least beat the game. I think we've got maybe one more session for now for Armored Core. That's going to be Sunday. And so I would like to continuously be working on things art-wise that are related to the playthrough for Infinite Fusion. I won't only be doing stuff related to it because I know it would get old, but as we proceed through the game and we see things, I think it'd be cool to kind of come over here and mess around with the sprites. So yeah, I think we will call that a stream. Let me go see who is online that we can raid. Let me go look at my main page. Let's see, Yatra's online. Aaron Dwight's online. I haven't raided Aaron in a while. We can go see what they're doing. They're playing Prey. I have not played Prey, but that sounds interesting. So let me get that queued up. And we'll go ahead and pause BGM. Meet you. And we'll go to outro. Wait for this thing to finish processing, and then we'll be good to raid. So thanks again for everyone who came and hung out and watched me go through the creative process, in quotes, trying to come up with interesting Pokemon. Like I said, we'll be back on Sunday, I believe, to jump back in with more robots in Armored Core. And so, in the meantime, hope everyone has a good rest of your evening, and I will catch you folks later. Now let's go see how Aaron's doing.